Next, we're going to talk about the war, the first war in Iraq. This is called the Persian Gulf War. This man right here, his name is Saddam Hussein. He is a murderous dictator. He kind of looks like Joseph Stalin, but he is not Russian. He is actually from Iraq. Okay? So what had happened was Iraq had been in a long-term war with Iran. They were trying to take over Iran so they can get access to the oil fields of Iran and become a military power. Saddam Hussein had the fourth largest army in the world at the time, which was not trained that well. So a 10-year-long war ensued, and Iraq lost the war. They had, in the process of waging war against Iran, they had actually borrowed billions and billions of dollars. And now the people that loaned them the money wanted the money back. Now, Iraq was planning on paying off the war debt with the land that they had conquered from Iran, but since they lost the war, now they have this huge bill, and they have no way to pay it. So Saddam Hussein decided that he was going to invade this little teeny-tiny country right here called Kuwait. Kuwait is basically one big giant oil field. The whole country is an oil field. There's thousands upon thousands of oil wells there. And so George W. Bush stated that he had to draw a line in the sand, and he pledged his support for Kuwait. So our president said that if Iraq invades Kuwait, that is the line in the sand. If they cross it, we are going to get involved. And that's exactly what happened, folks. Iraq invades them. We come in through the Persian Gulf. This is why it's called the Persian Gulf War. And our ally, Saudi Arabia, actually allowed us to move our troops through their country so that way we can attack Kuwait and attack Saddam Hussein and his army in Iraq. Okay. Secretary of State James Baker helps to organize a coalition. A coalition is a group of governments that work together. Okay. Which includes both the Europeans and the Middle Eastern countries seeking to rescue Kuwait and return the balance of power to the region. Moving on. What was the U.S. foreign policy goal of the Persian Gulf War in the early 1990s? And the real reason we were there is to liberate the country of Kuwait. We're trying to free them. Now, this guy right here is in charge of the war. His name is Norman Schwarzkopf. He just died about 10 years ago or so. I can't remember the exact year that he died. So anyway, Norman Schwarzkopf leads coalition forces during Operation Desert Storm, which rescues Kuwait. The fighting was known for its quickness. The entire war, the whole war, lasted about 100 hours. 100 hours. And the use of shock and awe with precision bombing. So basically, we took a page out of Hitler's playbook. You remember we talked about the Blitzkrieg, right? What comes first in the Blitzkrieg? Bombs, right? So we have now, instead of bombs that are dropped by planes, we have smart bombs. And these are laser satellite guided bombs that can hit specific buildings, which is a capability we never had before this. So now it's our chance for a little big stick diplomacy. We are showing the world exactly how precise we can be with our bombs. I remember when I was a kid, on the news, they were actively showing U.S. bombs and how accurate they were. They had live footage, they had pre-recorded footage of targets being hit in Kuwait and in Iraq as well. Okay, so the whole strategy was we are going to stack up here in Saudi Arabia and we are going to do a Blitzkrieg style attack on Iraq. And whenever we attacked Iraq, we just destroyed them, folks. It was not a fair fight at all. It was not even close. Saddam Hussein and his men were digging trenches like it was World War I again, and we just came in and bombed the crap out of their trenches, and we overwhelmed them within 100 hours. Now, Saddam Hussein got really upset about this because that means he can't pay off his war debts. And so he said, if I can't have the oil in Kuwait, then nobody gets to have the oil in Kuwait. And he ordered his troops to do something horrific. He ordered them to destroy the oil wells of Kuwait and blow them up and make them spew all over the place and light them on fire. So thousands upon thousands of oil wells were blown up, and it became the worst environmental disaster ever in human history. You can see the sky was just black. This is actually a photograph of Kuwait from space. These little glowing lights, each are oil wells. And it took months to put out the fires and return control of the Kuwaiti oil fields to that country. In an effort to meet the complaint from the Vietnam War, the U.S. uses all volunteer army. We did not draft anybody for this war. We learned from our mistakes in the Vietnam War, and therefore, this was a much more popular war, and there were barely any protests at all in the United States. It was a quick, easy victory for the United States of America, and that's how we like our wars. Okay? President Bush is criticized for limiting the war to just rescuing Kuwait and not including the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. So, going back to our map, folks, this is Kuwait down here. As soon as we destroyed the Iraqi armies in Kuwait, we stopped. Saddam Hussein was basically powerless at this point. We could have marched straight to the capital city of Baghdad, and we could have killed him or captured him and overthrown his entire government. That would have saved us a lot of trouble, because 20 years later, after September 11th, that's exactly what we're going to have to do. So there's a second war with Iraq that's coming after September 11th. Actually, it's 10 years later, not 20 years later. All right, moving on. Here we go. In 1990, President George H.W. Bush stated that the U.S. had to draw a line in the sand. Which incident prompted this reaction? And I'm going to go with the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Okay? Invasion of Kuwait, right there. All right. We are moving on. Both the Persian Gulf War 1990 to 1991 and the Vietnam War provoked anti-war demonstrations in the U.S. What is one reason the Persian Gulf War caused less political unrest in the U.S. than the Vietnam War? And the reason why is, of course, because we had an all-volunteer army. We did not have any draft during this second war. Okay? That is the Persian Gulf War.